Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Inshallah, before we start, we have a few presentations, and inshallah, we will start by the recitation of the Quran. Let's bring it up, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We've chosen this surah in the terms of the educational value, and obviously this is the first command, which was issued to the messenger. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ikra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq. Recite in the name of your Lord who created. Khalaq al-insana min alaq. Created man from a clinging substance. Ikra wa rabbika al-akram. Recite, and your Lord is most generous. Allazi a'lama bil-qalam, who taught by pen. Alam al-insana ma lam ya'lam, taught man that which he knew not. Kalla innal insana layatagha. No, but indeed man transgresses. Arraha astagha, he sees himself as self-sufficient. Inna ila rabbika ar-ruj'a, but to your Lord is the return. Ara'ayta allazi yanha, have you seen the one who forbids? Now it's interesting, in the first 9 verses, we get the state of man, and this is transgressing, sees himself as self-sufficient, and in this verse we look at what we have, Amir bil Ma'ruf and Nahi al Munkar, and then the surah goes on, Abdan iza salah, a servant that prays, one who is on guidance, or Amara bi taqwa, which inshallah, which we will speak on as one of our core values. Araita in kazzaba wa tawalla, have you seen those who deny and turn away, and they are not aware that Allah is all-seeing. I thought we'd start with this surah because it takes a lot of themes in terms of the need for Islamic education, the need for us to enjoin goodness, amara bil taqwa, and to forbid evil, and to not to be afraid of saying what is right and saying what is true, inshallah. And then having the sources, the correct sources of guidance where we get that, inshallah. So inshallah, this is a lot to be learned from those few verses. Some of you may be joining us and not sure what strong support is, so I thought I'd give a very brief introduction to what we do. Strong Support was set up in October 2019, and we are a peer support for Muslims who struggle with sexuality. Recently, we also have been seeing support for people who struggle with gender dysphoria or gender identity issues. The difference being that we don't accept or identify, or community doesn't identify with a sexual identity, and instead, if we do choose to identify ourselves, we identify with taqwa or identify with God centricity. Our values are based on Quran, And I think a theme of what we really, our goal is helping people live a life which aligns with their beliefs and values. So for us, that is looking at God centricity, looking at what a self-centric life is and what a God-centric life is, and seeing how that happens in our lives and what we can do it. A core theme is about understanding our desires, understanding where they're coming from, going a bit deeper, and really asking questions so we understand ourselves better, and we can make better decisions by understanding our history, our past, and so on. The um, the resource is really an opportunity for Muslims or even non-Muslims, people who wish to get support, to find that self-esteem, find that inner strength, find that inner power, so you can address some of these issues. And as the Quran mentions through numerous verses and obviously numerous traditions, the importance of um, brotherhood, ikhwaniyya, the importance of what masculinity is, appreciating what Islamic masculinity is versus what other forms of masculinity which we are shown at the moment, and similarly the same for femininity and sisterhood, which is a topic which inshallah the Ustad who's well versed on this can inshallah help on this. A core part of our understanding is also dealing with shame. A lot of us who have same-sex attraction or gender identity confusion suffer from shame, suffer from idealization, and it's about understanding where these things are coming from. So inshallah, that's a brief overview of what we do. I'm very grateful and very honored that our guest has taken time to be with us. I'll just have a very brief overview. So Ustad Gabriel is co-founder of Iqra.org and goldenruleappeal.com. At the moment, he is focusing on his counseling services that we will also show. He's a positive Islamic psychology counselor as well as an educational consultant. And so he studied existential well-being and positive psychology from the University of KU Leuven in Belgium. He was born actually in Romania to a Christian family, which I find really interesting. Mashallah, it's so good to see, especially in the Western world, to see that how the importance of Dawa and the importance of us not just staying in our communities, being isolated in our communities, and helping a lot of people who are finding Islam, and the Ustad is a great example for that. As you can see, he's taken a lot of Islamic education, studied in Mishka University of North America, as well as bachelor's, doing his bachelor's in Islamic studies, as well as double major in biology and psychology neuroscience. So mashallah, very, very well learned, and a further master's in Malaysia. So obviously a lot to put in that little paragraph there. He worked as the general director for Al Risala schools, in which, and I know we discussed with him of the numerous youth which he faced and the numerous issues that he faced in that role, which has allowed him to understand youth issues, understand and build a framework that really deals with these contemporary issues that we're facing. Earlier, he worked as a social worker in the Family Respite Services, as well as the Islamic Social Welfare Association. So he has 17 years of experience in counseling. And it's rare. I would say, at least in the Muslim community, it's rare to find an Islamic scholar, and as well as someone who then puts that into Islamic psychology, which is still a growing field and is a huge need for the Ummah at the moment. And he currently lives in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So we're a little 7 hours apart, but we're very grateful that he can join us today. His counseling services are on the posts on our website. Please do check him out. Again, the link is there, and we can send the link if anyone asks or anyone needs that. He's very vocal on YouTube, so please do check out his YouTube channel. I know I did with the latest crazy video that's been going around from the LGBT lobby, which is recently done a piece on where they're so brazen. They say, we are coming out for your kids, and there's no denying that. And actually, I was reading one of the people in that video has been convicted of children abuse, is a child abuse person who's actually in the video, which is crazy. But yes, he has a lot of videos, and please do support him. He has a Patreon page where you can support the work which he is doing. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the Ustad. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much for joining and taking this time to be with us. Like we've just mentioned, I've gone through your CV, or gone through the achievements, and mashallah, it's absolutely great that you've fit, mashallah, so much in that space. One of the questions which came to me when I was going through it was, you've worked with youth and children for a very long time, and you could see the different struggles that the Muslim youth were facing and so on. And I know at some time as well, you embarked on counseling and then went into saying, okay, let's embark on positive psychology or positive Islamic counseling. So I'm always curious to how people decide that, and how they say, okay, I'm not going to go the traditional route of an Islamic scholar. I'm going to go in this route where I'm undertaking counseling and helping. So yeah, I'm just curious to understand what factors or what made you kind of go in this direction.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. First of all, thank you for having me today on your show or your podcast, mashallah. And yes, I'm familiar with your work, mashallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and put barakah in what you are doing. To respond to your question, alhamdulillah, I think when I became Muslim, one of my greatest, I think, objectives and promises to Allah was that I will work for Him. I said, I'm going to do something for you, because I was just coming out of doubt, out of depression, out of confusion, out of so many problems. I was in deep depression before embracing Islam, for many years. I would say probably about 5 years. You know, it was very, very difficult, and nobody knew about it. It was just between me and God. It was only God who helped me to get through it. And I promised Allah that I was going to work for the deen. I was going to do something, you know, I mean, you can never repay God for anything that He has given you, but at least you can try to do something to serve His cause. But when I became Muslim, I was pulled into the community right away. Somehow people said, "Oh, you're a new Muslim. You must know so many things," right? Because new Muslims are given a pedestal a lot in a lot of communities, right? You see that a lot. Oh, tell us your conversion story. How about you do a lecture? How about you do a khutbah? And that's nice, but that's not always good, because new Muslims themselves struggle with a lot of issues, and they carry a lot of baggage from their past into the present once they take the Shahada. So definitely it's not the best idea. But anyway, I was basically pulled into the masjid and made as a social worker coordinator for ISWA, Islamic Social Welfare Association in Windsor, Ontario. And I was working with new Muslims. I was working with so many people. And I had the only knowledge of Islam that I had was what I've learned studying Islam to become Muslim, because I finally embraced it. I believed in it. And I was blessed that one of the local scholars took me under his wing and started teaching me. But I think to answer your question, it was when I started studying the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where I saw the comprehensive approach that he had in terms of knowledge and application, where I realized that without a doubt, all the different branches of Islam are important today. The sciences, for example, you know, Aqidah and Fiqh and Hadith and Usul and all these branches that today people specialize in these. But I don't have an issue with it. Alhamdulillah, I've studied some of them. Is that where I looked at I would call it the organic Islam, what the Prophet said would practice, right? Like that's like the organic Islam, you know what I mean? We have to say that, right? And I would say it was so comprehensive, right? They didn't have these specific names for these things, even though, yes, there are some indications of, for example, the word fiqh being used in the Quran, yufaqihu fi din, in the hadith or something like that. So I saw that the Prophet ﷺ was very comprehensive. He was a counselor. He was a judge. He was a politician. He was a father. He was all these things. But he was actually a human being. He was what we call insan kamil. He was just an overall comprehensive human being who knew everything, knew how to do everything, right? And I think that's what really motivated me, for me to say, okay, there's, mashallah, a lot of people are specialized in one thing and they're experts at it, right? Within the Islamic sciences, but there's not enough people who know enough from these things to be able to then connect them, all of them, to like real life issues, right? So again, I'm not saying that, you know, mashallah, there's a lot of work that's been done, but there's also a lot of theory in our Muslim ummah right now, right? And that is why when I became a teacher, right? When I became a teacher, that's when I realized that there was a huge gap between students and Islamic scholars. So my first, after my placements in teachers college in inner city schools, then I went to work in well, before that, actually, I went to work in Islamic school as a teacher. And the Muslim students themselves would not feel comfortable to go and talk to the imam, even though the imam had a lot of knowledge. Was probably one of the most knowledgeable person I knew in our city, right? And for me and him, we could have an amazing discussion. It was just so enlightening. But I felt the students would not be able to go to it. So when we would have like our civics class or our social studies class, right? They would just sit with me and we would just Q&A, you know, like that was our class, right? And I think I solved more problems that class, then, you know, maybe others in the community, I'm not trying to brag, but this is the reality, right? It was just because the students were able to
mm,
connect, were able to understand that, okay, we can open up and discuss these issues, just like some of the Sahaba would come to the Prophet ﷺ
mm,
and confess, say certain things that maybe some of our people would not be very comfortable to
mm,
hear, such as the young man who said, Ya Rasulullah, allow me to commit zina,
mm,
right? Or Ya Rasulullah, I've done this. Or Ya Rasulullah, I've done that, right? People were always coming to the Prophet with certain things, right? And when you read these things, again, in his life, that I really became so attached to the seerah, some of our people, I've tried it as a new Muslim to go to some people and then you get met with very much kind of,
mm,
you know, like a resentment or, you know, fear or, you know, how can you say this? Why would you, right? And I'm just like, but the Sahaba would do that. Like they would, you know, feel comfortable to go and talk to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So I think that's what pushed me to say, you know what, I think I need to diversify my experience, my studies, to incorporate. Because if you look at psychology, psychology is what, in definition, is the study of the psyche, of the soul. Actually, in definition, it was focused on the soul, or actually the relationship between the mind and the soul, the heart and the soul. And ideally, in the original definition. Right now, it's a whole different story. And what does Islam usually cater to? It caters to the nafs, to the soul, to how that is related to the body, to that relationship between the heart and the soul. And right, it's a comprehensive system that really, if you look throughout the Quran, how many times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the soul. For example, when he talks about creation, he says that we have blown into him the soul, right? The nafs, or the ruh, is throughout the Quran focused on, be it about creation, be it about desires, be it about, you know, just the self. It's, you know, just when Allah refers to the people and themselves. So basically I said, I want to work, I want to position myself as a solution to people's problems, right? I want people to be comfortable enough to come to me and to talk to me, and for me to try to advise them to the best of my ability, based on what I've studied, plus what I've looked. Of course, the most important thing is, as I said, from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, who was for me the best. He's my best role model, the only role model that I try to follow in terms of counseling, in terms of professionalism. Of course, we fall short of that in Allah, and He help us to achieve a better, you know, closeness to that. But that's what Allah says in the Quran, right? That
mm,
He says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. And the Prophet, there's the best example. So for me, he is the best person that's ever walked this earth, the best example. And when I look at his life and how he approached counseling, how he approached dealing with people, I wanted to be like that. So basically, that's why I've gotten to do what I do today.
mm. SubhanAllah, I think well put. And yeah, I think there is a gap for a lot of youth when they sit with a scholar and an Islamic scholar and they have issues which are, as you mentioned, very private and very sensitive, to come forward. And you're absolutely right. When we read the ahadith, we see how open these discussions were with the Prophet, because obviously he allowed an environment where people could trust him. He was Sadiq, he was Amin, he was someone people could go to and trust and be very, very open about these issues. And it does seem like sometimes that isn't there. There's almost like, oh, I can't possibly tell my mom this. I can't possibly ask him these issues. And absolutely, we lack in the amal sometimes. I myself sometimes think, okay, we have the knowledge, but how do we implement that knowledge? We have the theory. We know these things are halal and haram. We know how they've come about to be halal and haram. But what do I as a Muslim living my life, how do I then deal with if something's haram and I'm going towards it? How do I practically deal with it? Um, so I think, yeah, and that's fantastic that you've kind of, you've seen that, and instead of scholarly opinion would just be, this is what is halal, this is what haram, we recommend you do this. Um, we, the community sometimes needs that support for people to reach that, or to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or to help counsel them through that process. Yes, yeah. So thank you for that. So this is a Q&A which we've done as an open Q&A. As you mentioned, sometimes more fruitful discussions are done by an open Q&A, rather than a traditional lecture that we would give. So for the participants which have joined, you can see there's a Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. You can also upvote some of the questions. As you can see that there's an anonymous capacity that you can submit things anonymously. I'd like to reiterate that this webinar is live and it is recorded, so just be aware of that. So if you do want to ask things anonymously, I've seen someone just ask for contact details, and we can provide that later on, inshallah. Alternatively, if one of you would like to, if you don't want to be anonymous and you want to raise your hand so you can ask the Ustad by audio, that is also possible. So if you want to ask through audio, then there's the opportunity to raise your hand, and then inshallah we can take question. So Bismillah, I think inshallah we can start with the questions, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Bismillah.
So the first question is, Salams Ustad, what would you advise practicing Muslims who are struggling with exclusive same-sex attraction, no desire for women at all? Sometimes it feels like things will never get better. I make dua and pray constantly, but the pain and struggle is daily. It feels never ending. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, that is a very deep question. I get asked this question. I take about 30 clients per week, 30 to 35 clients per week, alhamdulillah. And I would say out of, let's say, 35, about 15 will be having SSA issues, right? 15 to 20 per week, subhanallah. It is a huge problem that is increasing in our ummah. It's beyond the scope maybe of this this program to discuss that. But to answer the question, first and foremost, I refer you to a statement of, I think it was Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, when he was asked about a man who was very much struggling with the desire. Okay, and it's not my point is not whether that desire was hetero or homosexual. What he said, that the man couldn't get it. That's what I want you to focus here. That man was not able to fulfill that desire, and he was sick. He became sick because of it. Okay, he basically, and yes, having a broken heart can be classified as a spiritual, sickness, or even something that you could pretty much die from, right? So, and Abdullah bin Abbas, the person died. Okay, he passed away because of, he was so attached to this desire. He wanted to express his love and couldn't, but he was holding himself for the sake of Allah. And Abdullah bin Abbas said, a person who does that will die the death of a martyr. Okay, he said the person who will struggle with a desire, something that he cannot fulfill or she cannot fulfill, that he or she will die the death of a martyr, right? I totally understand how a person feels, like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and how difficult it is to express or people to understand you. Because of course, as brother said, that in our community, it's mostly, is this halal or haram? And I think, to be honest, my clients anyway, the ones that come to me, I've not had anyone yet so far who has come to ask for counseling who believed that it was halal.
Mm.
They all believed it was haram. They all came to say, hey, how do we deal with this issue? Okay, so that's number one. There are people who believe it's halal and they're trying to justify it and whatnot. But the ones that I deal with, the ones that come to me, I don't have to have that debate. I've had that debate with other people, or people try to have it with me. But people would come and then they know where we stand on that. And I've always reassured them. And I think that's another thing that our community has to be really, really cognizant of, is that there's a difference between a judge and a counselor. Okay. And I think too many people in our community act as judges. And to be a judge, you have to be qualified and have certain qualifications and be appointed as a judge. And a judge judges criminals. Okay. And a criminal is someone who has committed a crime. All right. And the people are coming for counseling. Most of the people we're dealing with are people who are trying to get help. They're not out there raising their fists in the air saying, hey, we're so proud of what we're doing. They're saying, I'm suffering. I need help. Yeah, how can I make this go? Can I make this go? Is there any way I can do something? I'm suffering. I understand there's a cognitive dissonance between, what I believe and what I feel. And that cognitive dissonance is causing this vacuum that is filled by depression and anxiety, right? Because your feelings and your faith don't match, right? So there's this misalignment, and basically what's in between is depression. It's filled with depression and anxiety. So a counselor doesn't treat it like, hey, brother, it is haram. Yeah, he knows it's haram. We remind him with Allah. We always everything starts with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think, as you said, it's God-centric, or we call it Allah-centric. And it's Allah-centric, God first type of counseling. So I would say that, number one, you're not alone. There's a lot of people who are having the same issue. So don't allow the shaitan to give you this elephant in a room type of, feeling that you're you're kind of alone. You're this horrible person. You're this monster or something like that, right? Because it will lead you to more depression and more anxiety and more people, right? Number two, I would struggle and work more towards understanding what are the origins of your feelings. Okay. From my clients, after a few sessions, I would say 90% of them, I'm able to identify a trauma or some event in their life that is linked to that. For the other 10% is a bit difficult. Okay. But usually I firmly believe that there's always a trigger, something that has happened. Okay. And when I help them understand that is when things become a bit better. Because when you understand what's wrong or where is it coming from, right? You don't have that, like, what's wrong with me? Have I done something wrong? Like, is this me? Like, was I born this way? Why did God allow me to be like this? Right? There's all these questions that come in our mind that add to the anxiety and to the depression. But when you understand what has happened, what you were exposed to, or what has someone done to you, or what have you by mistake done to yourself in maybe one of the formative stages in your early childhood, mostly that's when people get this trauma. When a person understands that, it does help with reducing the anxiety. It does help with just kind of making peace with yourself that, look, I am where I am, and really I'm going to try to do my best what I can do, but I don't like where I am, but I need to deal with this, and I can have the strength to deal with this, right? So I think, so again, it's like identifying the origins, okay, understanding the processes, understanding what's gone wrong, right, can really help reduce a lot of the feelings that are associated with SSA. Our minds naturally don't like anxiety and stress, so we try to reduce that. And sadly, a lot of people will do that by, as I said, making the haram halal, right? Because that's the whole thing, is the guilt, is this nafs al-lawwama, as Allah swears by, the self-reprimanding nafs. That's the one that makes you feel bad about your sins, about your problems, about your issues. That is a very important ingredient for tawbah, for repentance. But if you lose control of it, shaitan will work on that actually. Because see, if shaitan cannot get you to commit kufr, he wants you to lose hope, right? So a lot of people are not able, he can't get them to commit kufr. They'll commit a lot of sins, but they won't commit kufr. But he can get you to lose hope, right? He'll make you feel like you're the worst person ever. How dare you lift your hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How dare you pray? So what do people do? They come to us and they say, I can't even pray. And I say, why not? He said, because I feel like this. How can I pray and I have same-sex attraction? Like last week, I had a brother who does Dawa, and he is, having very deep same-sex attraction towards the people who is doing Dawa with, in his team. And he said, I feel like a hypocrite. And I said, but have you ever done anything? He says, no. I said, so what's the problem? But he's like, I feel like a hypocrite. I feel like I'm there working with these people, yet I'm thinking sometimes certain wrong things, right? And I say, you see how shaitan is going to try to make you stop dawah, make you feel like hypocrite, give up salah, because like I don't feel like praying. I feel like I'm not worthy of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a lot of the time that I spend, I'm not a therapist. It's not therapy, we can talk about it later. But I counsel them to understand how to manage these emotions. Can you get rid of these emotions? That's another topic. Okay. But what I try to help them, because I know how they feel. They feel like, man, like I don't know. How can the way I feel right now, I'm 20, 25, for example, how can I last another 20 years or 30 years without committing a sin, without actually, falling into this where I have these super strong urges? So I have to deal with the urges on one side. I have to deal with the fact that they are haram on the other side. I have to deal with shaitan telling me I'm a hypocrite, I'm the worst person. Why do you even pray? Why do you make dua? Why do you make tawbah? It's like, where do I see the light at the end of the tunnel? Right? It's very, very difficult. So for those people who just say, yeah, you just have to deal with it, you have to control it. It's not as simple. They really super simplify. Say, yeah, it's haram, you have to control it. No doubt, there's no one should ever have the smallest doubt or entertain a small doubt. This is haram. It is haram. We have to turn to it. Is a mental health issue. It is linked to the heart. It is linked to the spirit, but it has an origin. It started somewhere. Something happened. All right. And if we don't understand that, yeah, I mean, then forget it. Let's quit. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So when people understand, people start rationalizing what's going on, people learn how to manage these emotions and not look at themselves as this monster, as this horrible person that, is an abomination, then they can actually do progress. They can progress in their life dealing with these emotions. Problem is, there's a big mistake in our community with our brothers, with our sisters, with our, many people, is that we understand SSA from a non-Muslim perspective. We look at same-sex attraction and homosexuality from a non-Muslim perspective. The same way we look at psychology in general. Mostly till today, especially in Muslim countries, We're in the Freudian school of thought till today, even though in America, for example, it's not really the dominant school of thought anymore, psychology, yet the Muslims countries are still sticking to it. We're still, so a lot of the problem is that we understand SSA from a non-Muslim perspective. We give the ruling of Islam, it's haram. But when we understand and we deal with it, even when the imams try to counsel sometimes or they speak in public, they're very careful of the law and of not saying something wrong. When it's explained or discussed, you will hear them using jargon and terminology that is pretty much predominantly Western, right? So it's like, that's not the way it works. We are Muslims. So to go back to the question, sorry, I know I've opened up many discussions on this, but bottom line is, a person who's struggling with such things, the struggle can be a great reason for you to enter Jannah, number one, as a martyr. Okay. Number two, if you understand what's the origin of the problem, will help you a lot. Number three, to know how to manage it through counseling. A lot of people, the problem is they cannot open up. When you talk to someone, man, a lot of the problems start disappearing. That's why you'll see throughout the some of the accounts of the people who say that they've come out, is that how well they feel. Why? It's because they finally were able to express it to someone, right? But when we create an environment where they can express what they're feeling to someone who's professional and under amana, not to start saying, hey, look at this guy, right? Then a lot of the stress and the anxiety can be reduced, right? Because at least I can talk to them. Most of the people come back to me to talk to me is because they have someone to talk to. And they say, no one knows about this issue. And I say, good, keep it like that. That's one of my first requirements to my clients. One of the first questions I ask them, have you told anyone about this? And most of them say no. And I say, keep it that way. But they're like, I can't. I feel like I have to talk to someone. Yes, you can talk to me, or you can talk to a professional. But I want to tell my family, like, your family might judge you. Your family, like, they'll beat you. They'll abuse you, right? And what's going to happen? You might leave Islam. You might leave the deen. You might, trust me, the LGBTQ community will embrace you at any moment. While sometimes our community, if they're ignorant and they're not educated in this issue, they will push you out. They will hurt you. They will fight you. You know what I mean? So people need to understand the difference, because now people might say, whoa, was Brother Gabriel like helping these people? No, you don't understand. We're not talking about the gay pride parade that's marching on California Boulevard. We're talking our brothers and sisters who are suffering, man. And they're coming repentant every day, struggling and saying, help me. Yeah. And I tell you how I feel, and you punch me in the face, or you slap me, or you kick me out. See, that's the problem. If I come and I try to paint the whole house rainbow, literally, and I'm pushing it, and I'm trying to do this and this, and I'm making a song and getting a chorus together and infiltrating this, then yeah, I am fighting these people intellectually on every single day. Every single day, I put my neck on the line on the law and all this. I fight them head on. But for our brothers and sisters who are praying, who say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, who are fasting, and who are coming to us saying, I need to talk to someone. Just talking to someone will help me. What are you going to do, man? The Prophet ﷺ, how did he behave with sinners, right? These were sinners who came and talked and told them about certain things. He tried to help them. He tried to deal with these issues. Okay, he tried to help them by talking to them, reminding them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and trying to solve their problems, right? So I think that's where I would say that there's a lot of work to be done. But for the brother or the sister who asked this question, you have to Find someone you trust that can help you, coach you to navigate, to manage, because no two people who are suffering from SSA are the same. There will be certain things that are common, but it's based on their personality. Some people, I know some of my clients who are happily married and have children, and they're suffering from SSA, but they were able to marry. They were able to live, and no one knows about their issue. Only I know and Allah knows.
Mm.
Yet I have other clients who made an agreement. For example, the sister is SSA, the guy is not, but he loves her, he understood, and they basically lived together, and he helped her, and they have kids, and she fell in love with him and even started reporting attraction, hetero attraction, because of the emotional connection that they were able to. The healing happened together, but the husband was aware of it from the beginning, but he accepted that, right? So you see a different dynamics, right? And yet you have others who cannot even think about ever being married, cannot even, it's like it won't happen, right? Then I have some clients who are transgender. Okay, so you cannot say this or that. You have to take each case, dissect it, open it up, try to go back into the past, understand what's been happening, and you need to work with each other, help them, maybe work with other professionals, for example, to help them who have certain speciality in other branches of therapy, maybe, which is of course not legal in many of the Western countries. But basically, you need to have someone to help you manage your emotions, manage your life, be able to talk to them, to be able to understand you, to be able to guide you and to what to do. And it depends, as you progress to your life, you might find that you're going to start taking certain choices that are very, very much in line with just a normal lifestyle. And you're going to become much more aware of your feelings and your emotions, and you can work on yourself with some cognitive behavior therapy to just kind of, will it go away 100%? Some people, I know it has. Okay, so I can tell you that yes, there are people, and I have specifically one client that I'm really proud of, because this guy has gone all over the world. He's traveled the world. This has been his life goal, right? And I've learned so much from him, and he's my client because he's actually gone through the therapies, and he's just an expert in this issue. So yes, some people fully will say that they recovered, while others say partially. Others say they've reached a level of, maybe 3 on the Kinsey scale, somehow bisexual. Others said no, but they're able to deal with the issues and they're able to manage their emotions. It depends. The most important point is that we have such programs as yours that Muslims know that we can come forward and ask for help without being judged, without being, attacked, without being, because we're not the, hey, pride parade type of people. We're the ones who are coming like this. Please help. We need help. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you. And it's, listening has brought, it's amazing the percentage of clients you're seeing with these issues, or even transgender issues, is surely an alarming picture of what is happening in the Ummah, and how the support for these important topics are a big need. And while I was listening, I was recognizing that actually in Muslim countries, they can't actually come out to their parents, because over here in the West we would say come out, get the support, and so on. But in a Muslim country where you've got ignorance of what this issue is, you may find that these people, if they do seek support, then the community which is ignorant to their needs pushes them out. And then obviously they have, as you say, the rainbow colored people who will just affirm what they're doing, and it's a more safety hazen. So you're absolutely right in that each person is unique because they'll have their unique constraints, which would mean, and they would have their unique um, points or trauma, which then got them to the issue in the first place. So having that, and as you said, diversity of people who are married or people who are thinking they can't get married, and then just seeing where their thoughts and beliefs are at the moment. And of course, an approach like CBT will then help them to see what are some of the negative thought patterns that they have, how they're ruminating, and then to get them to that. So subhanallah is you know, it's a shocking percentage of clients which are coming to you for that, and may Allah reward you for having that. I would say unique service at the moment, which is being offered because, as you said really well at the start. There is a gap in Islamic knowledge at the moment for the work that you're doing in terms of actively helping someone to taqwa, holding their hand and helping them reach, understanding ma'rifah of themselves, and then understanding what God's centricity looks like. So, no, thank you for that. Just go for the other question. How do I stick to a confident masculine internal feeling, even if you or I'm going through a lot of rejections from same-sex relationships? So we all, and I guess this brings in the gender aspect of what masculinity is. How can we create a confidence in our masculinity, and how would that be possible?
Okay, inshallah. So when it comes to gender and masculinity, so I always say there's a difference between a male and a man, right? So a man is born with a gender of being a what's called dhukur in Islam. He is a male, gender-wise, okay? And a female is unath, or a female in Islam. And basically that is, she exhibits certain characteristics for that. But that does not make a man, a male, a man, a real man. Okay, it does not make a female a real woman, right? And that is just like having an Islamic degree does not necessarily make you an imam, okay, or a scholar. Now we have to really understand that. Okay, it's what you do with what Allah has given you that makes you who you are. Okay, so let's go for the question, to have this masculine frame. It's an art, it's something that you work at. And this is exactly where we look at the Prophet ﷺ. Yes, some men are born with certain skills or certain, genes, or they're more predisposed to show more. But how can you specifically pinpoint that? People have tried to say that. In the end, I think this is an issue that behaviorism answers. It goes back to the tarbiyah. It goes back to education. It goes back to the environment that you live in. It goes back to what you're conditioned to. If you're gonna, and that's where a lot of people are showing SSA, same-sex attraction. If you look back into their lifestyle in the formative stages, a lot of them didn't have their fathers present. They didn't have a comfortable bond with a male. They were not hugged by a male. They didn't feel what it means to be kissed or touched by a male energy. Hence, they had that feeling that might have been converted into anxiety, that might have been converted into sexual energy as well, or sexual attraction. It can happen, right? They've never been comfortable to touch a man. There's always been that doubt. There's always been that feeling of, of not being connected to the male energy. And the first exposure that you'll get to that is your father.
Mm.
So a lot of men who have this problem, lack of masculinity, if you go back and you analyze the relationship with the father, the father's present there. Physical presence is not enough. There has to be quality there, quality time, quality investment, tarbiyah. There has to be a bond. There has to be a physical bond as well. I mean, that's how it is. A father will touch his son, will hug him, will kiss him, will embrace him, as the Prophet ﷺ did to Hassan and Hussein. And that man came and says, Ya Rasulullah, you do this? He says, of course. He says, what can I do if Allah has removed the mercy from someone, Because he thought that kissing your children, your grandsons, like something, and he was kissing Hassan and Hussein, right? So if that is missing, I believe that can lead to some of the problems that we're discussing today, right? So it's a whole issue of nurture, nature, yes, but nurture, an environment, tarbiyah. It's an art. To become a man, it's an art. And the good news is that just like anything, you can learn it even later on in life. A lot of people don't give up because they say, I feel so weak, so feminine. I don't even know what a masculine frame looks like, because when I look around, everything is called toxic masculinity or negative. What is the example of masculinity that we get in the West, for example? What? UFC fighting or Sunday night football, people smashing each other? That's pretty much what people look at when they look at masculinity. Or guys smashing beer bottles or tattooing themselves, right? Or driving Harley. That's kind of like what people see in the West. And then, of course, you're like, I don't want that, right? That's not necessarily what masculinity is, right? But where do you look at masculinity again, right? How do you get that? So good news is that, yes, you can still learn it. You can still develop it. And to me, the most masculine frame I found was within the Prophet ﷺ, again, in the Sirah and the Sahaba. I mean, yes, were they assertive? Yes. But at the same time, they had softness, or what's called rifq, right? And you'd find Abu Bakr or the Prophet ﷺ crying and his beard is wet. In the West, crying is like, oh, it's for girls, right? Man cannot cry or something like, or it's not that you cry because you're like weak or you're scared, but people are very emotionally, intellectually, they had a high emotional intelligence that they're not afraid to demonstrate, right? And no one came and said to the Prophet or to Abu Bakr, for example, Omar comes and finds Abu Bakr and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ crying, right? After they had that issue with the prisoners of Badr, right? And Omar says, Ya Rasulullah, tell me, maybe I'll cry. Well, I'll pretend that I'm crying with you, right? And then he said that Allah revealed verses confirming your decision, and very harsh verses, talking. He was crying. So when you look at life of the Prophet ﷺ, you see him riding a horse with no saddle, with the sword around his neck, very masculine, sometimes no shirt, just amazing, really like, wow, it's like, man, this was like, he's digging holes, he's, hitting the rock, and he's predicting, opening the palace of Persia and Rome. I mean, amazing, right? Fighting, and all that. And then you have it on the other side, he's kissing his grandchildren, his beard is wet from tears, he's spending the night in prayer, he's patient, so this is the masculine frame, because Allah says so. He says that this is your best role model, right? And I think that's where people, when we say following the sunnah, right? You can start following the sunnah at any point in your life. And if you want to be a real man, you follow the sunnah, you study the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Because a lot of people say, I cannot be a real masculine man because all I see is I have to smash something in my head, or I have to have these huge muscles, or six pack, or like I don't know what, and jump from here and be like, get into a fight. That's what I see as man. And they're like, so then they feel so weak, or they feel like I can never be that. So I just quit. I don't want to be a masculine. If that's masculinity, I don't want to be that, right? So a lot of people not even attempt to, because what's considered masculine is a misconception, is wrong, because they're looking in the wrong place again. right? Just what I said about the terms and the definitions of SSA, we're looking in the wrong place. We're looking at a Western concept, the Western look at these things, and then we get disappointed. We're like, that doesn't work with me, doesn't jive, right? So I think masculinity is an art. I think it's a sunnah that can be learned by looking at the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, by starting to implement these things. And I think there's a perfect balance that a person wouldn't feel like they're getting out of their nature, or their, they're like, being just a human being, that they're not going to, to have to imitate something that is wrong, what I mean, that they cannot do, right? So I think everyone can become, every man can study and develop this art of masculinity and make a transition from being just a male to a real man.
Yeah, no, I think it's well put in that we, in our role models, or people that we look up to, as you're saying, if they're footballers or whatever that people aspire to, and we have forgotten the life of the Prophet, the seerah of the Prophet, and we don't really take that into consideration to say, okay, or even the women of Islam, for example, if you are a female, and we've lost that sense of what is masculinity, because we haven't explored the life of the Prophet, where he says the year of sorrow, for example, when he's crying that he's lost Khadija, he's lost Abu Talib, he calls it the year of grief. And yet at the same time, he's antithetical. If he's going into the battlefield, he's the best of warriors in the battlefield. And it's almost like, okay, these our perception of masculinity, which has changed so much, cannot then reconcile with what seems like antithetical masculine values, that he's crying, as you mentioned, he's weak, or he's showing grief, so that means that's wrong. And then at the other end, he's showing physical strength, and he's showing bravery and courage, and really, as you said, uswatun hasana, as in the best of examples, and that's why there's a lot of confusion of today when we look up, and youth look up to these role models or celebrities, which give a very, what I would say, a very zahiri, a very simplistic view of the world. And I don't know, you mentioned about even when we use these terms, they'll say SSA, whereas the Quran would talk about shahwa, and shahwa isn't SSA, it's more towards the desire in itself, or the lust in itself.
Yes.
And the Quran would use fahisha, for example, whereas that in terms of sexual morality isn't something which is found in Western literature, or Western, what does sexual morality actually mean,
right,
in terms of that. So I know you said that because the Christians have done most of the work in this frame, there's a devoid of Islamic thinking, or Islamic psychology, or an Islamic approach to this issue. So yeah, I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Right. So I think if we look at the books of the fuqaha, and let's go even back before that to the opinions of the Sahaba on the issues of homosexuality, and right, we look at Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam. All right, let's go back to that. See, Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam is in an interesting situation. He is in call it a village, okay, where there's men and women. All right, there are men and women. I think a lot of people don't look at it from this perspective. I think we just look at Okay, Lut came, and these men, the angels were visiting. The men came because the angels took nice shapes and forms. They wanted to see them, to be with them. And Lut said, "Take my daughters," and they didn't. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished them. I think, and then the story is there, right? I think we need to look at it from a few different perspectives. And just bear with me here. Number one, let's look at the facts. This is a village where people are procreating. Where did these people come from if men and women did not have sex? Okay, so here we're looking at, I wouldn't say it's like, you know, extreme homosexuality. You're probably looking at some form of bisexuality, or the actual action of going, and as Lut says, are you taking your desires on men other than women? Okay, which is true. That's what they're doing. He's saying you're doing something unnatural, right? Here's my daughters. You want to marry them? Marry women. You guys want to take your sexual desires. The correct way to do it is by women. What you're doing is not correct. But what stands is that these people, someone gave them birth. Okay, I mean, these people were procreating. So that village or that culture now was practicing some sort or form of homosexuality. Okay, does that mean these people are fully homosexual? That's beyond the point. But he is in a Lut alayhi salam is in this community that is basically, what can we say? All of them were born that way? No, they're not. They're not born that way. Something happened where this issue spread. This issue became a fashion, a culture, you want to call it. I want to connect that, just hold on with me for a second, to an event when I was a school principal in one of the girls' schools in a Muslim country, where out of 25 girls in the grade 3 class, grade 3, okay, about 20 of them were practicing lesbianism. Grade 3, okay? And people could not believe it. We had to fire teachers. There was police involved, parents, this and that. And the problem is, when I was talking to the teacher was saying, I don't believe this exists. I don't believe this is happening. I cannot accept that. And I said, everything is in front of you, and you still, they say, no, I can't believe that this can actually happen. I refuse to believe that this can actually. What happened is, it started with 2 girls, okay, 2 cousins doing it at home. Then they came to school, and every time someone would go to the bathroom, one of them would follow them. And then it became 3 and 4 and 5 and 20, till they reached one that had what you call the sexual morality. Her parents taught her, and she came and spilled the beans and said, this is what's happening. And that's where we got involved. All right. So you see, it spread. All these 20 girls were born homosexual. They're lesbian. Grade 3, which you're talking about 10 years old, 9, 10 years old. 10 years old girls molesting each other or raping each other in the bathroom. Yes, my brother. I know the Muslim community will say, bro, you're not, I don't believe this. A lot of times when I do my lectures, people say, I think you're making these things up. I don't believe this. Right? And I'm just like, that's why we are where we are. That's why we are having these issues in our community, because you don't believe it. You just, yeah, we're angels. So see, it can spread. So in the time of Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam, these desires can be conditioned into someone, and it can spread. This shahawat, these, as Allah says, you're approaching women, you're taking your desires onto women, right? Onto men other than women. So we see here is has nothing to do with being born in a certain way, or as what people are trying to do. Is basically something happened, and these desires were manifested in the wrong way, and it became conditioned into people. It can spread and so on. But what I'm trying to say is that when we look at these incidents, how did Islam deal with this issue? Where does homosexuality, or liwath, as we say, okay, where does it stand? It stands as a sin that is linked to desire. Okay? Desire can be manifested in halal or haram. Okay? Halal, nikah. Haram, zina. Be it homosexual or heterosexual. Both of them are haram. Okay? One of them is of a different kind, and the other one is of a different kind. All right? But both of them are, first and foremost, promiscuity sexual immorality. Second is who you do it with, and so on. It has a different category, no doubt about it. Right? So when we look at the discussions of the fuqaha of the Sahaba, for example, when in the time of Bakr, when there was a man who was doing this, and so on, and we look at how they dealt with it. How did the Prophet ﷺ deal, for example, with the Sahaba telling them to lower their gaze from beardless young men, right? Why? Because there were some feminine, maybe, aspects that might have incited them or something. So the Prophet said, you have to lower your gaze. How did the Prophet ﷺ deal with, for example, the person, what in the fuqaha would call, for example, yani the mutanna, okay, or the, some say the third gender, right? So he said, one of them said, he described, he says, yeah, if you go there, make sure you marry this one because she has this many curves when she faces you and this many curves when she turns around. So the Prophet said, what did you say? So he said, he told the women he's not allowed to be next to you anymore because his expression of what he described was very sexual from a male perspective, while he was a more of a feminine, inclining towards more feminine. So he was okay to be with the women at that point. It's a very detailed subject that needs to be discussed in another discussion. But you see, the way they were dealing with this was that this is a desire and it is a sin. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not make a had or a punishment for something that human beings cannot actually do, right? So like, if you could, like, Allah is not going to ask you to, like, I don't know, put toothpaste back into the tube, and then like, it'll be, it's like things that cannot be, or they're difficult to be done, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look at what he has made impermissible, are things that people can actually do, okay? Can people commit acts of homosexuality? I believe everyone can. If they don't have the moral compass, which comes from revelation, in just their basic instincts and desires, they can. For example, many straight men go to jail for 2-3 years in an all-male jail, and they can perform acts of homosexuality. Same, many women will go to female jails, and they can perform acts of lesbianism. Many women go to nun seminaries for 3, 4, 5 years, and there's a huge problem with lesbianism in nun seminaries, or homosexuality in priests or monks, monasteries. These people are not born like, but you have to look at the environment. You have to look where the desires, how the body will react to what. Bottom line is, Islam treats this as a sin. If you do it and you do it as a crime and you get caught and you keep doing it, or you fight for it, or you promote it, or you do this, then yes, you can be punished, because Islam does not want your personal desires to infringe upon someone else's or to influence someone else, as it spread at the time of Lut alayhi salam, right? These people are not all born that way, and they said all together, hey guys, how about we just make this union and let's just do this? No. Someone started it and then it spread. It became a culture, right? That's what Islam cuts, right? As for a person, right? When Omar Khattab stuck his head over the fence of that old man, he saw him with a prostitute. The man said, fear Allah. And Omar got scared, and he went to Ali and says, I want to say that this man was committing, he said, you have 4 witnesses. No, he says, I'll whip you. Ali was a judge. Omar is the Khalifa. And Ali says, be careful. You're going to get whipped, Islam doesn't jump over your wall, doesn't break your door unless there's something that's, threatening the state, or, a huge, overwhelming problem. A person's feelings, desires, as long as he can hold them and control them and does not infringe upon someone else's right, does not go and infiltrate the curriculum, the health system, the legal system, to we're coming to get you, then Islam only deals with you as your sin. It is a sin. It is not, it's a sin. Like, that's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. It's a sin. All right. So people need to understand. I think when we again talk from a Western perspective, it's been, raised to the level of so many things where people either embrace it because this is where you are and you're born that way, or, deny it, live in shame and anxiety and depression, commit suicide, like those are the two options that they give you. You know what I mean? Well, Islam says it's a sin. It's something linked to desires. If you know how to manage yourself, of course, the environment should protect you. And that's why I always say how important, why, people say, why is the Sharia so strict? A lot of people criticize Sharia because it's meant to protect you in your most critical times in life, so you can actually develop in a normal way. You can develop, because see, when you develop, you go from point A to point D in a straight line. That's an example. But a trauma or something can hit you off your target, and then you're going to misfire. You're going to go in the wrong direction. So your normal development was supposed to be just a straight line, right? But then at some point there, you're not protected. Something happened and hit you off, and you just derailed. And then, of course, you're going to keep going, and you're not going to hit the correct target. The Sharia protects you. It's strict. Yes, I know. There's so many rules. Yes, I know. But they have a purpose. Yes, I know. Sometimes parents are strict. Yeah, I know people have an issue with Pakistanis and Indians and Arabs, that their parents are strict and this and that. They don't allow them. Wallahi, be thankful. Be happy. SubhanAllah, because there's a reason they try to protect you. Islam has helped them to protect you. Because at that stage, I believe, if you can pass that stage, those critical stages of your development, and nothing interferes and nothing throws you off, I believe that most people, inshallah, will come out good. They'll do well when it comes to sexuality. Of course, there's going to be issues here and there, but still overall, they're not going to be confused and have these problems, right? They might commit a sin. They might do something wrong here and there, left and right. Everyone commits sins. But when you talk to our clients who are suffering from SSA, for them they don't think of it just a sin. They're having mental health issues from this, right? Because they don't understand where to put this issue, right? For them, it's not just a sin. They think it's an issue of identity. It's an issue of shame. It's so overblown because there's so much discussion about it. There's so much fight on it. There's just all over. So when they see themselves having these feelings, it's like they feel lost, right? They feel lost. And again, there's just so much going out there that they think it's like this huge ocean that they're swimming in. While it's just a sin. It is a sin. You're supposed to deal with it as a sin. As long as you can manage it and you can protect yourself, you're supposed to deal with it. Islam anyway dealt with it as a sin, theoretically. Now, of course, once a person gets on the highway of this problem and it advances through age and through time and so on, of course, this grows and the feelings grow. And if no one has ever explained to them and rationalized things with them, they've had no one to sit down with them, then of course they will have huge mental health issues because of cognitive dissonance. But if we are able to offer the service and target these issues early enough where people can talk about this and come forward to counselors, then I think there's a difference between, like, I have a client now who's just 15. Okay, just 15 years old. And the way this person deals with this problem and the amount of knowledge and the book that I recommended to this person, and just this person understanding where they stand, right? Was an amazing gain, as opposed to someone who's come to me when they're 39 or 40 and they say, I can't take it anymore. I'm about to commit suicide. Well, yeah, because you spent 20, 30 years dealing with this and not knowing where you are and not understanding, not having anyone to just kind of tell you, calm down, bro. It's not such a big deal. And it is not such a big deal. As long as you're not doing it, it is not such a big deal. All right? I'm not trying to play it down here.
No. I completely understand. And I think it's very important that Islam frames it in the right way, as you said, calling it a desire. and then looking at and having that client so early join you is so important, because we go through different desires when we're growing up. We go through different, all of us have different desires. And as you mentioned, it becomes problematic when people take it as an identity. So because I feel I am, and when they then take it as an identity, they take it
Exactly.
as equivalent to race. So they'll say
Exactly.
LGBT is as same as, okay, if I'm Pakistani, I'm Romanian, it's the same as I'm gay, and they take the
Exactly.
attraction towards a completely different level. And you're right, if because of the shame in our communities in talking about this, or people accessing services where they can discuss this, when they reach at breaking point, and then they come to us, and obviously it's become a huge issue where it wouldn't have to be. And it is ironic that the LGBT then want to go at the children, so they're directing that confusion at the developmental stage, where actually they don't even know what male and female are, let alone LGBTQ. They're still understanding who they are, as they're developing their themselves, understanding what gender is. And this LGBT comes in and is talking about sex and sexuality, which they don't understand at that age. And then we can see how damaging that is. And it does take time for people to, as you say, the shaitan comes in and it blinds them of any hope. It blinds them that the feelings could ever change. It blinds them completely, where they think that there is no, like you said, there's no more light, and there isn't anything which is left. Um, so I know, in terms of, I'm just looking at some of the questions here. Um, a lot of it has to do with people growing up, and I see some of the questions which are talking about external validation. So we have a lot of, like social media, for example, is a
Yes.
good example of, oh, I'm getting this many likes, or I'm getting this many external validation. And as we mentioned, that the premise of the desire is very external. So it concentrates on the body image, whereas the Prophet may have mentioned about healthy food, about eating healthily. We find that the Prophet didn't concentrate on body image as much as what we see now, where for some people the sole focus is the external image, and almost people's self-esteem is now linked to what their external image is. So I don't know, if you've seen that, and what, kind of what you would recommend for people who have that kind of need for continual external self-validation through how they look.
Right. I think that's an amazing question, and it is linked to an extent uh, to same-sex attraction. And specifically, one of the things that I looked at when it comes to body image, and I would say how that's been used by media to to propagate certain messages, and it's all linked to money in the end, to business, to making money, selling products, and so on, right? And I
Mhm.
would say the ones who are suffering the most, yes, the males do get targeted, but I would say it started in targeting the females.
Mhm.
And it was I was talking to another counselor, a female counselor, who deals with lesbians. And she was explaining, and I was talking to some sisters as well who are, you know, and we looked at even a small sample study on lesbianism amongst sisters, Muslim sisters.
Mm.
And my theory is, I'm just going to call it a theory, is that society has built this standard of beauty, okay, of what beautiful is, and it's with the purpose of selling, usually, be it, I don't care, gym equipment or yoga pants or I don't know what, bras or makeup or whatever it is, okay. And a lot of women, they've said, this is specifically now, I'm talking about women. They said that a lot of them project their feelings onto a woman that they would like to look like or be like, that they see in the media, but then sometimes they find sexual attraction towards that. It's weird, okay? One of the questions I asked in the survey, or in the questionnaire, was basically, do you get attracted to yourself when you look in the mirror? Okay? And all the women that participated, there was 52 women, okay, from all over the world, Muslims, okay, educated, they all said that yes, at some points they feel attracted to themselves, okay, sexually attracted, right? And we discussed this issue of projecting, and I think society is so hypersexualized. Everything has to do with beauty, that we've been so drilled on this that some people have now started manifesting this, or I think the byproduct of this indoctrination and consistent bombardment with beauty is that some people have become so aware of it, of their image or wanting to be beautiful, that it somehow has turned into a form of narcissistic, I don't know how to call it, even, I don't even, but they basically, they want to have this beautiful image. They look at someone else who looks beautiful, and somewhere in there develops some form of sexual attraction as well. I can stand very comfortably right now here and confident saying, for example, that most women in the West, and a lot of Muslim sisters that I've dealt with, I've talked to, could say that they do have attraction for other women. One of the videos that I'm going to release probably today or tomorrow is from one of the Quran teachers who said that her student just recently confirmed or said that she's sexually attracted to her. And this is a woman in hijab, a full-grown woman, you know. And she said, Ustaz, I don't know how to. And I said, it is something that is happening a lot. When I was in a Muslim country, again, as the school principal of all girls schools, okay, there was an epidemic of lesbianism. An epidemic, brother, not one, not two. In Canada, when I went to high school, I knew one or two lesbians and maybe one homosexual in the whole high school in the West.
Not 20.
In this Muslim country, no, it was more than 20, my brother. It was more than 20. Between these two schools, I can say somewhere in the ballpark about 200. Okay, cases. How? Okay, when you look at that society, though, I'm not going to mention the country or the ethnicity, but when you look at that society, it's everything. They've made the transition. There's so much indoctrination, there's so much hypersexualization of the society. It's happened so fast. Everything. Everyone's competing. Who's going to look more beautiful? Everyone's looking in the mirror. Everyone's taking selfie. Everyone's got an Instagram account. Everything is about beauty. They're getting too close to each other, always hugging, kissing, touching, this and that. And then boom, you know, comes to your office, this happened, that happened, this case, that case. And you're like, my God, from where? So many issues. Then you talk to other principals from other schools. Hey, are you guys having this issue? So one of my female colleague friends, who was from the same city in Canada with me, and she was working in the same country as me, okay? She was in charge of the female bathroom, and she quit her job, and I was buying her furniture, and I said, why are you leaving, you know? I said, why are you leaving? And she said, I can't tell you. I said, no, I need to know what's going on. Like, everything okay with the husband? Her husband's my friend, you know, everything is okay. She said, look, Jibril, I was put in charge for 1 year of, you know, like to guard, you know, you have like at breaks, you have to be at different places. And he says, I couldn't. The girls were doing things in the bathroom every day. And I'm telling them, and everyone said, we cannot do anything about it because they're from this one and that family and this, and we cannot touch them. And she said, I had to quit because I couldn't. I can't stand there allowing these girls to go in the bathroom and hearing the noises that are coming out of the bathroom. And not 1, 2, 3, but 10, 15. How do you explain this issue? When I looked at it, I tried to study. So I look at the culture and I look at what's their priority, and everything is about looks. Everything is about who can sport the best watch, the best clothing, the best car, the best this. A lot of aesthetic surgeries, a lot. Breast implants, lip injections, Botox, you name it. Okay, a lot, my brother. So I said, I think this is my theory only, of course, but this is what I've seen. I think just it's been drilled so much into society. People have become so conscious of these fake standards of beauty that somewhere at some point they're so in love with their image or what they're trying to be that somehow something got messed up in the process, and now they started getting attracted to the image that they themselves were trying to become. They're so obsessed with that perfection of beauty. That's why when you find, in general, when you look at people who are SSA, in general, not saying all of them, you'll find that they care a lot more about their looks and their you know, hygiene and the way they dress. They're more elegant, they're more good looking, they go more to the gym, and so on and so forth. Right? Like, I remember in America, the girls were saying in Canada, and you know, they're saying, why are all the good looking guys gay? You know, they say we can't find one decent guy, at least who's clean, who's hetero. You know, like all these gays are, you know, they're so good looking. SubhanAllah, right? It is a theory that I have, but I think this is what happened. I think we've been drilled so much on this, and at some point we lost the difference between, okay, this is beautiful and I want to look like this. We become so obsessed with it that we've fallen in love with it and develop sexual attraction for that image. And I would say it happens a lot more in women than in men, you know. And contrary to popular opinion, I believe that there's more homosexual women than men. Okay, women are more bisexual, but they engage in more homosexual acts than men. When a man is homosexual, I mean, it's pretty much obvious. But women, and a lot of these women that we had the interviews with, you know, for example, one of the questions was about genres of porn that they watch. And it will be surprising, 2020 and 2021 porn statistics showed that women watch lesbian porn the most, about 130% more than men. And you know what they say? They say, we're straight. We're straight. We're heterosexual. If a man watches gay porn, he's gay. But the woman said, no. And when I asked, I said, sister, but how? No, this is how women are. We're women. That's how we are. We cannot explain it. But we're straight. I was like, what? You know? So I know it might be confusing. I know a lot of people might be shocked, but I still don't have a very solid, crystallized sentence or things to say. But this is just a theory that I have that I don't know. It's been enforced through different avenues. Different professionals have said the same thing. And from the cases that have come to me, like, I'm not pulling this from articles only. No. I'm talking about things that have come on my desk that I've had to deal with. Yeah. And I've had to try to understand them.
Yeah, no, and thank you for sharing that firsthand.
So I'm just gonna move to put my phone to charge because it's gonna lose battery.
Yes, I know we're a little above time
okay.
at the moment as well. But no, thank you for sharing your firsthand experience with us. And even in Strong Support, we have a women's group, and I know the sister who leads it can attest to how filled that group quickly becomes, because it isn't, when we talk about homosexuality, we suddenly think traditionally male homosexuality, and we think that, and we don't have even if there are support systems available, they're more male orientated, and that's why
Yes.
we started the women's group, because it was, and it was actually the group which was um, most forthcoming, and they said, we want this, we want to do this. And you're absolutely right, the psyche is so different. I'm watching lesbian porn, but that doesn't make me a lesbian, because I guess they have a different emotional intelligence where they don't tend to identify as easy, or maybe as men might be doing. um, and I look at it and I think of how I remember the hadith which says, the Dajjal is one-eyed, but your Lord is not one-eyed. And we live in this world where it's the external, that one eye, the external, which is given the importance, but the batin, the inner, the soul, what's inside, is not given any importance in this narrative. And it's it's about educating young minds about beauty coming from inside, and
Mm,
having the when we say, when we look at the prophets, the best, the most handsome of them was Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam.
alayhi salam.
But
No.
obviously we can say the prophet was beautiful in its own right, but when he is the head of the prophets, is because of his taqwa, it's because of its closeness to Allah
Mm,
subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's that internal aspect of him, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, look, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala measures us on any scale, he measures us on taqwa, and that's the scale of measurement that we need to look at, instead of, for an overwhelming majority in SSN, I guess outside of SSA population as well, which is focused on image. The next question, if we have some time, um, is, there's this comment on, the Muslim community are failing miserably in the fight against the LGBT narrative. I think part of it is due to the level of shame and dehumanization Muslims themselves show towards people who struggle with SSA. This is ironic given the humanizing way of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam dealt with his companions who approached him with taboo. So my question is, what can Muslim da'is and organizations do to help change people's mindset to follow a more prophetic way in advising others without shaming and dehumanizing them? I ask because it would be very much help to deal with the struggle if people didn't look at us with disgust.
yeah, that's a very great question. Again, I want to reiterate the difference between our brothers and sisters who are coming here looking and seeking help versus those who are promoting this type of lifestyle, being proud of it, trying to infiltrate into the legal, the health system, the educational system, right? There's a big difference. Our brother or sister who's asking this question is someone who's saying the Muslim Ummah needs to be understanding and has to have services to allow for people to express the hardships that they're going through if they suffer from SSA. And we have to have services to help them, as opposed to look at them as some kind of abomination or, or a monster, which definitely is going to cause many people, and I've seen it, to leave Islam or to adopt sometimes people will not leave Islam, but they will believe it's halal, or join a movement that believes that, start preaching this type of lifestyle, because they didn't have who to speak to or who to connect to in the Muslim community. First and foremost, as we can see, there's not enough da'is and scholars speaking about this issue, okay, from a prophetic way. There's not enough people. Where are the khutbahs on this topic? Where are the YouTube videos on this topic? You
Mm.
know, other than it is haram, fear Allah. Of course, this is the first thing anyone should say. Fear Allah, no doubt. Then what? And the Prophet ﷺ didn't just tell people fear Allah. There was always some solution. Something always happened. No doubt, you have to fear Allah. But then what? Okay, even if the hadith ends, when you put all the hadith together in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, there was always some support. There was always a community. There's always people trying to help each other. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. Right? Help each other in piety and righteousness. Help each other. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. وَتَوَاصَوْا, would encourage each other towards truth. It's not only that they speak themselves the truth, but they help each other towards truth. Right? So no, this is the problem. We need to educate. We need to talk. We need people to get out of this taboo hat and just straight up talk. Hey guys, this is the problem. Islam treats it as a sin. This is what the scholars have said about it. This is what, this is the ruling of it. This is, if someone is using homosexuality and promoting it, is practicing it, is committing zina, is this, then yes, this is exactly what Islam has for them. There's a specific thing. No one is going to debate that. Anyone who does that has a huge problem. Okay, but we're talking here about people who says, I know I shouldn't feel this way. I want to understand, why do I feel this way? Who do I talk to? Hello, anyone? No one. Okay. Oh, I see there a big rainbow just down the street. They're saying, come here. We love you. No problem. Don't worry about it. Leave these people. They're extremists. He looks at these people, frowning, saying, who are you? Look at you. And they see across the street saying, come, we'll take you. Where do you think they're going to go? Come on, man. Let's be honest. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do, and it's all about education. We need to educate. We need to educate based on prophetic standards. The Prophet ﷺ dealt, yes, there's a difference again between a judge and a counselor. There's a difference between a criminal and someone who's a sinner. Okay, there's a big difference. People need to understand this. All right? Not every sinner is a criminal. Yes, every criminal is a sinner, but not every sinner is a criminal. Okay? They have to understand that. The Prophet ﷺ dealt with criminals who were homosexuals, and the Sahaba dealt with criminals who were homosexuals. Yes, we don't ashamed from that. We don't back down from that. We don't try to reinterpret that. But then there's a sin, and they dealt with the sin, with the fasha, with the shahawat and the desires of someone who might have never done a crime, and just feels that way, and is suffering and wants to be able to get some guidance because they don't know why they feel that way. So does Islam deal with the two the same? No, it doesn't.
Absolutely, yeah. And even with the Sharia, the reason why there's 4 witnesses is almost, if you're out in the street, you're publicly doing it, and it isn't if someone's struggling. And even in our traditions, it says someone approaches the Caliph, and the Caliph then forgives him afterwards because he's repented. So even there, the door for forgiveness, the door for repentance is open, because we have a lot of the people from anti-Islam say, oh, it's a Islamic punishment. It is, the government comes in, but they don't actually realize that, as you're saying, there's a difference between the criminal and a person who's struggling with sin. We all struggle with sin. And it's about realizing, okay, how for that population have we provided them with the support they need to come out of that struggle, to come out of that sin. And if we are, as an Islamic community, if we always look at it in terms of jurisdiction or criminalizing, then we don't see the humanness of that individual, and we forget to see the support which is needed. And like I said, the support even exists within our Islamic legal framework, which says someone who repents is better, and they don't then get the punishment. So thank you. I don't want to take too much of your time because I know it's late over there. But is there any, because you've shared so much and you have had extensive knowledge on this, and I know there's a lot of questions by a lot of people here who are suffering with SSA and would need that support. So what would you say is the best way to get in contact with you, to reach you for further questions or for further support?
Yeah, if they follow, I guess, the website that you provided for them, and from there they can reach directly to book me or to speak to me through WhatsApp. My WhatsApp number is there online. I try to be as available as possible. I have a schedule, but I try to be as available as possible. Or they can contact me through Instagram or Facebook, and then again I'll most likely redirect them towards my booking website, and that's probably the best way to reach me.
Fantastic.
Inshallah.
Yes, and we have those links in our webinar posts, which people have joined us, so you can go on there. Inshallah, we'll put our Ustad Gabriel's other details on our counseling page as well, inshallah.
And just one thing, because just to reiterate, alhamdulillah, by the blessings of Allah, we are providing free counseling as well. So for those who cannot afford it, all they have to do is just follow the steps for the free counseling. That's it. They just have to do that, and inshallah they can, because some people cannot afford it, some people cannot afford, and we understand that. Those who can, alhamdulillah, they help us and help the project go. Those who cannot, no issues, alhamdulillah. If they, don't let the money stop you or anything like that, because I know counselors these days are expensive and getting to people is not easy. So this is a service that we're trying to offer to the community. For those who cannot, then bismillah, no problem, inshallah.
MashaAllah, may Allah reward you and further your efforts in this very important manner. I think both your YouTube channel is vocal on, so you're doing the work in the public sphere as well as on a one-to-one private, as you said, with in confidential with the amana, as you mentioned, that these people can get a safe space where they can speak. I know there've been questions here, so if people want to contact us, Strong Support, you can also do that through email, or there's a support form on the contact section of our website. If you're in this webinar and you want to get further support, or even get not sure about Brother Gabriel's links or contacts, then just do message us. But I'd like to reiterate, Brother Gabriel, that honestly, it's a unique service which you're offering. SubhanAllah, so one of our community mentioned, and I looked up and I said, SubhanAllah, there's someone who's going further than saying it's haram, and looking at this population and saying, okay, how can we, as you said, this is an issue of winning the hearts, winning people's minds, where we have the opposite force, which is trying to take over people's hearts and minds. And the example of the Prophet is the best example which we follow. In he did not use narrative, he used his akhlaq, how he dealt with people, his demeanor, how he was, in which brought people towards Islam, and had that relationship where people would discuss absolutely anything with him. And your service is testament to see, mashallah, so many clients, and really thank you for being so honest. I want to say that from dealing with the community, there's a lot of people who can't come publicly and kind of say the thanks, but at least for that community, Strong Support community, I want to extend the thanks for the work that you're doing, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you in your work. May we pray for you that
Ameen.
inshallah He gives you further tawfiq and continued
Ameen.
success in your
Ameen.
endeavor, inshallah. um,
Ameen. Inshallah.
Ilahi Ameen. Thank you so much for joining. And inshallah, our next session, our next webinar would be in August. We are actually talking about children's rights. So children's rights in the we have an organization which is called Them Before Us, and it looks at how the self-centric LGBT has forgotten the children. So we would be looking at children who are donor conceived, or children of divorce, or children of LGBT marriages, and listening to their stories, and saying that what that self-centric view of their parents, how that has affected them as children.
Inshallah.
So inshallah, that's on the 14th. Inshallah, we can join us. Till then,
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. We end with dua. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbana alayka tawakkalna wa alayka anabna wa alayka al-masir. O Lord, upon you we rely, upon you we return, and to you is the destination. Thank you everyone, and assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.